Okay, before we start to the introduction to the documentary about the Malaysian society, let's see some background of our Malaysia. Okay, as usual, as a Malaysian citizen, we should know about the background. So, Malaysia consists of two distinct geographical regions. This is Peninsular Malaysia and East Malaysia. Malaysia was formed when the Federation of Malaya merged with North Borneo, which is today the province of Sabah, Sarawak, and Singapore. And then it's been segregated 1965 in 1963, and cultural difference between Peninsula and East Malaysia remain. During the formation of Malaysia, executive power was vested in the Perikatan, later the Barisan Nasional, coalition of the three racially based political parties, namely the United Malays National Organization, as we know as a UMNO. So, Malaysian Chinese Association MCA, and for the Indians is MIC, Malaysian Indian Congress. UMNO has dominated the coalition from its inception. Although Islam is the official state religion, the Constitution of Malaysia guarantees freedom of religion. This is the beauty of our Malaysian country. Here we go to the introduction about the documentary about Malaysian society. Okay, as we know, the Malaysian is a multi-ethnic, multicultural and multicultural society, and the many ethnic groups in Malaysia maintain separate cultural identities. The society of Malaysia has been described as Asian in miniature. The original culture of area stemmed from its indigenous tribes along with the Malays who moved there in ancient times. Substantial influence exists from the Chinese and Indian culture, dating back to when trade with those countries began in the area. Other cultures that heavily influenced the Malaysian include Persian, Arabic, and British. The structure of a government along the racial balance of power caused by the idea of a social contract has resulted in little incentive for the cultural assimilation of ethnic minorities in Malaya and Malaysia. The government as historical Malaysia is a multimodal, little distinction between Malay culture and Malaysian culture. Okay, now we are seeing about the migration of Indians to the Malaysia. So, migration of Indian people started initially in 1786 when British colonial office opened in Penang. The influx of Indians happened in the mid-19th century due to the intervention of the British in India and Malaya. British used their political influence to bring the Indian laborers to the Malaya to work in the plantation field to the agents in India. I think in 1819 the number of migration is increased after the birth of Singapore. British brought the Indian prisoners as laborers in the Malaya due to insufficient labor supply and high demand through projects undertaken by the government in the construction of railways, roads and agriculture. The main thing is Indians are contributing in social and economic aspects after Malaya's independence in 1957. After 13 May 1969, the government drafted as introduced the new economy policy NEP to reduce the eradicated poverty by creating job opportunities and raising income for all races as well as expanding the process community, restructuring to achieve socio-economic equality in a very plural nation. Okay, now we see about the Indian culture in our Malaysian society. Okay, Malaysian Indians or Indian Malaysians are Malaysian citizens of Indian or South Asian ancestry. Today, they form the third largest group in Malaysia after the Malays and Chinese. Most are descendants of those who migrated from India during the British Malaya era from early 19th to the mid-20th centuries. The majority of Malaysian Indians are ethnic Tamils. Smaller group include the Malayalis, Telugu, Sikhs and others. So Malaysian Indians form the fifth largest community of overseas Indian in the world. Within Malaysia, they represent the third largest group consisting 6.8%, which is our now situation 6.8% of the Malaysian population after the ethnic Malay and Chinese. They are usually simply referred as an Indian in Malaysia. Orang India in Malay, Indian in Chinese. So Malaysian Indian population is notable for its class stratification with a significant elite as well as large low-income group with the full. Malaysian Indians make up disproportionately large percentage of professional per capita, consisting 15.5% of Malaysian professionals in 1999. As the census taken in 1984, up to 38% of national medical professional workforce consists of Malaysian Indian. In 1970, the per capita income of Malaysian Indians was 76% higher than the Malay majority. By 2005. This gap has reduced to 27%. Okay, now let's talk about the Malaysian Indian food. So the Malaysian Indian food was spicy enough. So the number one we are showing is tosai, and the middle one is muruku, and number third one is a banana leaf food. So there is a variety food, but all been spicy as enough. So when come to the music instrument, the traditional music instrument by the Indian people in Malaysia, it's urmi, tabla, veena. So this is one of the 3 examples that I will took for this documentary. So later I upload one video for this urmi section. So let's see the video and enjoy it. Now we are seeing about the festival that celebrated by the Indian community in Malaysia. So the biggest festival that celebrated by the Indian community in Malaysia is Deepavali. Deepavali is one of the precious festival for Indians. When the Deepavali day came, the day will be more happening with colorful activities. So what is Deepavali? Deepavali is a festival of light. The main thing that in Deepavali is muruku. Muruku is one of the Indian traditional food. It is our Deepavali identity, which every Deepavali there is a muruku, and beside that we play the firecrackers, which make the day more happening. The reason we play the firecrackers because it celebrate the independent day from the history. We will have a special prayers in morning and at night for our God, for the people who passed away. So this is other Deepavali daily routine that by Indian community in Malaysia.
Early history. The first recorded movement of people from China into what is now Malaysia came as a result of the Mongol forces under Kublai Khan during the 13th century. A steady stream of Chinese immigration to Malacca occurred during the Dutch occupation of the region in the 17th and the 18th centuries, until the foundation of British settlement in Penang 1786 and Singapore 1819, triggered in mass immigration from China to Malay Peninsula, with the majority of this immigration being agricultural. With the further discovery of rich tin deposits in British Malaya, the Chinese immigrant community became more involved in the tin-making business, resulting in increased wealth within the community. Despite their economic success, there was disorder within the newly formed Chinese communities in the region, causing them to split into secret societies and exacerbating political unrest. The Chinese community in Malaysia. Malaysian citizens of Chinese ethnicity comprise 20-30% of the Malaysian population, making them the second largest ethnic group in the country after the Malay majority. Malaysian Chinese form the second largest community of overseas Chinese in the world. Most Malaysian Chinese citizens are descendants of Southern Chinese immigrants, largely from Fujian and Guangdong, who arrived in Malaysia between the early 19th and the mid of 20th century. Modern history. Following the victory of communist forces in the Republic of China, communist insurgency amongst the Chinese population of Malaysia became increasingly common. By the time the Federation of Malaya attained independence from the British in 1957, and there were still conflicts with such communist loyalties. Ethnic Chinese community members who surrounded were given the choice between repatriation to China or to return to their normal lives by showing loyalty to the elected government of Malaya. This campaign against communists, particularly among the Chinese community, continued until 1960 when the Malayan government declared the end of the state of the emergency. The ethnic Chinese community in Malaysia are traditionally important contributors to the economics and business sectors of Malaysian society. This stems from consensual Malay in which Malays were to hold political dominance. The Chinese were to control the country's economic sector, and the Indians were to play a lesser economic role. Today, most ethnic Chinese Malaysians reside in urban areas of the country and generally do not speak Malay amongst themselves. The Chinese community have spread their cultures around Malaysia. For example, the food. First one we have here is the Hainan chicken rice, and the second one is dim sum, and the last one is Hokkien mee. On the other hand, we have the music instruments. First one is pipa, second one is zango, and the last one here we have is guzeng.